Let's talk about process and procedures. Let's talk about the risks that occur when a rubber stamping board fails to trust and verify the information provided by its subordinate administration. What happens when the subordinate administration lies to the board and the board does nothing about it because they're providing a rubber stamp line trust to the employees of their wife's boss, is what we catch on this one for Larry, right? Or Unky Wayne. You got to watch what Unky Wayne's doing. Holy smokes, Unky Wayne, you really ought to pay more attention. But anyway, let's get into this for a second. Let's go down the athletic committee minutes. This
Thing
is
under new business, Mr. Cleaver, if you could just scroll down, our annual gym floor recoating.
and this is a pretty straight. This is just an example. So the Auditor General's report talked about contracts. The Auditor General's report talked about lack of review. This happens to be one contract where during this meeting, and I'm not on the committee, I'm just a regular old citizen, right? Citizen Dave, director, that listens in, and my ears perked up because in the world of process and procedure and purchasing and the use of public money, there's red flags jumping up, man. This thing doesn't pass the sniff test. And the more to scratch, the more it gets stinky. Holy smokes. Let's take a look.
Which we do throughout the summer. They take care of the gym floors to make sure they put the coating back on top to avoid any issues, make sure that it has a tacky surface to it. We did send out for 3 quotes, and you could see that 2 of them are on CoStars, which is listed on their quote. Last year we used J&J gym floors, which did come in at the lowest.
So here we have a previous company, J&J, qualified, right? Qualified, done the work here in the past, J&J, right? Then you go to Larry, talking about
Happy with the one that had previously taken care of it, then I follow your recommendation to not go back to them.
Yeah,
so then Kyle denigrates J&J, the lowest bidder, who's done work before. And it wasn't really an issue. It was an issue, but wasn't an issue. Apparently, by talking to J&J, the issue was that prior to J&J, S&S, here, let me get this up here to kind of give you an idea of what took place here. So you have these 3 companies that do this work. There was a company called S&S. Dave Murray was the owner. He had an employee by the name of John Trageser as a worker. And these guys did the floor. John did the work. Kyle had issues with John's work. And here's the email proving Kyle had issues with John's work, right? So here it is. Let's start at the bottom. Right, here's Kyle's getting a picture sent to J&J. I'm sorry, S&S. Right? Floor is lifting. It's not in a playing area. Please, needs to be addressed. Please apply, right? So this was an issue with S&S gym flooring. John Trageser. Right? That's who Kyle had original issues with. Not J&J. J&J did the coating on top of whatever John Trageser did. Okay, so at least we understand what's supposed to be happening here. Now, yes, John Trageser did leave S&S. He was arrested for theft, forgery, and other crimes. He did some bad things. It wasn't all that great. But that company that he works for now never did any work for Lehighton. I mean, they're not even on our approved vendors list. I mean, they're on CoStars, which makes them approved from the state, but Here we go. Let's take a listen now.
They came back and did what they had to do, and on that aspect, it was fine. It doesn't look good.
So that's him talking about J&J, who said that even after they put the coating on top of what S&S did and all the problems they had, you know, you can't put another coat on top of a bad coat, right? They came back anyway, did extra work to try to keep Kyle happy. And Kyle even admits right here, just said, yeah, it was good. They came back and they did the best they can with what they had. But here you go. He's going to denigrate them, say they're not a responsible bidder.
And if we're paying the money, you know, to get it done, and the previous years I've been here, we never had that issue. So I don't think it was.
Now wait a second. That's just a bold-faced lie. We never had problem. There's an email of the company right before J&J that had the problem. That was the underlying issue with J&J's work. Done by John Trageser, who no longer works for S&S, but works for this new company after having some legal issues.
It was a floor issue. I think it was either a product issue or
Application issue.
application issue.
There he goes. They're talking about the application. The applier was John Trageser.
So I think it's in our best interest, you know, at this point, to just try a different vendor, you know, and see what that, if we have a similar issue, then we know, you know, it might be something at the end. And it's not like if there's an issue, it's just the look. The look wasn't, there was a cloudiness to the look and stuff.
So now he's backtracking his issue, right? You don't want to defame a contractor that did work for you. And then even after they, quote, were polishing the turd and you weren't happy, they came back to put some more polish on that turd.
In some areas.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you used All-American prior to using J&J.
Right there. According to Larry, he heard Kyle say that we used All-American before. Let's listen to Kyle's answer, knowing we never used it All-American before.
So you
Right.
work with that company as well. So it's not like a completely unknown vendor.
Actually, it is exactly like a completely unknown vendor. Brand new.
Right, and I believe they used to partner with somebody else and so on and so forth.
There's another one. They used to partner with someone else? Here's partner? John Trageser is accused of theft, forgery, and other crimes alleged. He had the checks sent to WTL. Checks totaling over $31,000 from 2 different school districts. He convinced 2 different school districts to write a check to a different person than the purchase order that was provided by that school district, right? He did a real number on S&S flooring, including filed lawsuits seeking the payments for the school districts which are pending. S&S had to go sue the school because the school wrote the checks to the wrong person, and John Trageser gets arrested for his activities, right? Of apparently diverting those checks to a place that he was part of, a little baseball organization. It's a mess. It's really a mess. But anyway, let's keep going.
But yeah, again, we reached out to those 3 vendors and got prices on because we have used them in the past.
Mm-hmm.
They never used All-American in the past. He's just lied again. They're just making shit up.
So my recommendation would be to use the All-American Athletics quote for those 3 gym floors. Typically, we try and get the work scheduled the week of July 4th because it will be the last week of June this year because we do a shutdown week of athletic activities, so there is nobody in on those gym floors for that stretch of period, and that has worked well in the past.
Now here comes Unky Wayne. Come on, Unky Wayne. Put your foot in it, Unky Wayne. I know it stinks. Nobody trusted, nobody did the work, right? Trust the ethics of your responsible directors. Did they do the work? Nah, they didn't do the work. Let's take a look. I'll show you what work we did, but here we go. Here comes Unky Wayne stepping in it.
All Americans fine with me, Kyle, and there's isn't that much of a difference in price between them and J&J anyhow.
Not that much of a difference. Only about 15%. If you take only about 15. If you take a look at the two bids, he's providing a water-based product right here. This is an oil-based product. 4 and 5 is 9. And 3 is 11. Plus 4 is 11.4, 11.7. Right? Sorry, 12. 12.7 and 3. A little over 13 grand. This guy's 11,200. 15%. And we will beat any recoat price by $100. We didn't even honor or look at or review. Wayne, when you look at these contracts, somewhere you raise your hand. Hi, I'm on this committee. If we have a lower price and they're willing to match it by being under $100, why don't we hold them accountable to it? Right? Since they're a new vendor trying to get the business.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good. Everybody just rubber stamp it. So let's take a look at what we really did. So you got these 3 quotes. Very simple. Obviously, they're in color, not the ones that were given to me by the district. They're not the photocopies. These are the original quotes, just so you know. All right, so we have, I decided to call John Trageser, which I did, and get his reference list, which he provided to me. One of the references, you'd think you'd put the best foot forward with your references. So this is them talking about All-American, right? So the crew started to sand the high school floor before anyone realized they were doing the wrong floor. So even though it was a pretty big mistake, luckily it all worked out. Taxpayers were the ones that had to pay for both floors getting done instead of the one that was originally planned. How is that your reference? Unbelievable. Okay, so let's take a look at the invitation to bid. Here is Kyle asking J&J Floors, the company they denigrated, for a bid. Why would you ask for a bid from a company that you're not even going to recommend? Especially if you need 3 verified, qualified vendors. And there's tons of companies that does this work. Why would you pick one that you're going to carve off? And then why would you take the other one where John Trageser used to work that did bad work, moves to a new company after some legal issues, and now use the same guy to do new work at a higher price? And oh, by the way, let's go back to this bid for a second. If you look at this, this bid is for water-based. This right here, 2-part water-based polyurethane. This is the more expensive stuff. More expensive stuff, less expensive. Doesn't make sense, right? Here is John Trageser right there, email, admitting that they had trouble back in 2018. When you look at the work that he was doing, it was peeling up. That was the issue. They apparently didn't apply it properly, and yet he's the guy that applied it, sent it off, and they came back to see if they could fix the problem. Right? Kyle told them they're not sure what they're doing at this point. This was last year in an email. Did we get these emails from Kyle? Did we get the references from Kyle? Did we get all the bids? Did we get all the background information? Did we get the fact that the person he's dealing with and talking to was arrested for allegedly theft, forgery, and problems? Where's the whole truth, Kyle? Small industry. All these guys talk to each other, right? Here's a reference from another school that we got. Here's the newspaper article talking about the problems. And here's proof that John Trageser worked for S&S Flooring. So Kyle's information that he's providing in a committee meeting doesn't appear very truthful. Doesn't appear very factual. Doesn't appear very thorough. So when the board of school directors has a responsibility to establish policies, procedures, and a process, and then fails to hold the subordinate administration accountable, when Larry Stern doesn't go to his wife's boss and say, do it right, and make sure it gets done right, we got a problem. This doesn't pass the sniff test. Excluding the lowest bidder. Not even talking to finding out why. I called the guy. I called all of these guys. And their references. I found out more I need to know about flooring in the last week. And Kyle had 3 years to figure all this out. The board of directors should hold our subordinate administration accountable to a process. We should establish what the process is. Qualified bidders, at least 3. If you're going to denigrate one of our vendors and possibly put us at risk of getting sued, you better have some facts behind it. If you're going to make stuff up, you better find out exactly what morality this Lehighton Area School District cares about the pride and character that we're trying to teach our kids. You don't need to lie about this stuff. You get paid really well. You're doing both jobs. You got facilities manager and athletic. You don't even have the check and balances between the two because you're the same person doing both. Normally, athletic director says, I want to use these guys. I want to find out. Then the facilities manager says, well, did you get your references? Did you get your quotes? What do we have? What do we know? What do we need to know? That's the first check and balance before it even gets to the board. All of it gets missed. All of it gets, it's wishy-washy. It's a woozy. It's a wazy. It's gone. They didn't do their job. And Larry piping in, we used them before. Larry, you got a vendor list. We didn't use these people before. Unky, Wayne, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why do you make it so easy for me? Just do your job next time. Right? Steve was completely quiet on this thing. I know, it's only $11,000. But Auditor General's report, $3 million. Very similar. Contracts. Lack of receivables. Oversight. Paid a stipend to Larry Stern's wife's boss for thousands of dollars to do a job. Come on, where's the oversight, guys? You're a little too sticky, Larry. I think it's time to resign. Unky Wayne, you have a job to do. If you're not going to do it, resign. This is a pretty simple. We as a board need to establish a process. The process should be simple, much like everyone else in the state. Enough of this, don't worry about it, we'll rubber stamp you and blindly trust whatever you want to do, regardless of what you're doing or who you're denigrating or mismatching what actually took place or pretending that we had past vendors when that couldn't be anywhere closer to the biggest lie I've ever heard in a committee meeting. Not even close to the truth there, Kyle. What are you doing? All right. Have a great day.